Hi and welcome again to the channel Newtown Naughty Boy. And first of all, I'm sorry that it's been so long since my last video, but things seem to have taken over a little bit at home, and now I seem to have a bit more time to do a few more videos on airgun and airgun shooting. So today we're going to look at a particular scope that I use on my main rifle for HFT shooting, and a number of people have actually asked me to actually do a review of the scope that I use on my rifle. I've mentioned it before in other videos, and what I actually use is a Vortex Viper scope. So today's video is really all about talking about this scope, how it works, why I've chosen this as my main scope to use on my gun, and the benefits and the drawbacks of this particular type of scope. So Vortex Viper, let's just review the scope in its entirety. So this scope, it's quite an expensive piece of equipment, and just to give you a bit of history behind why I came to actually buy this scope in the first place. I have used a number of scopes in the past, much cheaper scopes than this. They've all worked to a certain extent very well, and I haven't been disappointed with the cheaper ones, but I felt that I was getting to a situation where maybe I needed to buy a scope that was comparable with the rifle that I was using. Most certainly, if you spend more money on a scope, then you are buying better optics, and that is basically what I wanted to do in this particular instance. I found that as you get older and your eyesight deteriorates, then really you need to give your eyes the best chance possible of finding the target, and acquiring the target using a scope, of course, is the main part of what the scope's all about. But if you as you age, your eyes change, and really you need as much assistance as possible, and so I started to search and talk to people about what they used and what might be suitable for me. So having used a very much cheaper scopes than this, I forked out just over £600, I think, for this Vortex Viper, and it was a difficult scope to find. I had to talk to the importers to get this imported over from the States for me, so it wasn't very easy to find. I knew a couple of people that were using these, so I had looked through them, and that's a necessity really. If whatever scope you're looking for, you really need to look through and try a few before you buy, and that's very important. So what are the aspects of this scope? Well, one important aspect of this scope, okay, it's cost over £600, and that's quite expensive, but the scope is actually guaranteed for life, and by that it's actually guaranteed against accidental damage as well. So Vortex will actually replace this scope if you damage it in any way, and that to me was quite a big asset. It's not like I'm going to go out and try and destroy this scope in any way, but I've got that assurance there that if there's a fault with this scope, then it will just get replaced, and that's great. So this scope, Vortex Viper, is a 2.5 to 10 times by 32, so it's got a zoom ring on this end here between 2.5 and 10. I actually shoot this scope on 10 times, but it's got quite a variable range of zoom here, so that's great. The end lens is quite small really, it's 32, but that was something that I was looking for, particularly for me. Having a smaller exit lens here on the scope ensures that actually the range of focus through variable distances remains in focus, or at least it remains in focus for quite a range, and that's something that I actually wanted. Some people that shoot HFT competitions actually like the blurriness at certain ranges, but I was finding this a bit of a hindrance, and so as I say, I wanted a scope that had some clarity through quite a wide range. So that was one option for actually buying this scope, which was actually going to give me that clarity through between, well, let's say something like 15 yards all the way out really to about 40 yards, so that's great for me. So another aspect of this gun, its parallax ring, or its focusing ring, starts at about 35 yards, or its marking is 35 yards all the way around to infinity. And that's really not great for air rifle shooters, because of course those that either hunt or use an air rifle for competitions need to be able to shoot from, let's say, 8 yards out to 45 yards for competitions, and certainly that type of range for hunting as well. So you could argue that this rifle is actually not suitable for air rifles at all. But I knew this in advance, and I had talked to the people that own these scopes, and they had actually altered the parallax or focus of this scope themselves, and they told me how I could go about doing that. So to alter the parallax adjustment of this scope, you have to actually move the ring here on the exit lens. Now this won't move very easily at all, and I had to buy one of those devices, those rubber devices that you can purchase quite easily, that will undo the lids off tins, enabling you to actually take a lid off a tin that's actually stuck on or whatever. They actually wrap themselves around the top of the tin lid, and I did the same with this scope. So I purchased one of these devices to actually just break the seal on this ring here and then make the alteration. And the way I went about that was, after I'd slackened off this ring here, I then set this turret here, or the parallax ring here, to a desirable sort of mark position, and then I went back to this ring and I turned this until I felt that I had the right focus for the right range. So in my particular instance, I wanted the parallax to be set about 25 yards. So I now have a mark on here of 100 yards, which actually is 25 yards now, because that mark now has been altered by turning this ring to suit 25 yards. Now I know this might sound a bit worrying doing this, and you have to be very careful. This was a new scope when I bought it, and I knew that probably doing this would invalidate the guarantee to a certain extent, but I wanted this scope and I wanted to use it, and I knew from the people that I talked to that what I was doing was actually quite achievable, and so I went ahead with that adjustment. So just to go over some of the adjustments on this scope, which are the same as more or less any other scope that you might purchase. Two turrets on either side, one on the top here, and one on the side here for lateral and vertical adjustments of the crosshairs. They click, the actual turrets click, and you don't have to unscrew any cap to make that adjustment. They're quite a definite click to them, so they can't, at least they can't move very easily. The other aspect is, as soon as you've actually achieved where you want your crosshairs to be, you can undo on each turret 3 grub screws and actually move. If you look at the top here, you can see that there's a red line on the top. You can move this red line to match up with a 0, so you can actually make sure that your scope is actually registering the correct position for your crosshairs by doing that, and that applies to both the turrets. As already mentioned, your focusing or parallax ring here, again, it's adjustable and it's marked, as I said, from 35 yards to infinity, but if you are going to use this on an air rifle, you need to adjust that the way that I've just described. So at the business end, or at least the eyepiece end here, we have another turret, if you like. This scope has an illuminated reticle in red, and it has a certain number of illumination values on this dial that goes from 1 right the way around to 10, I believe, yes. And what's quite useful is that between the numbers is the actual off position, so you don't have to rotate this wheel all the way around to actually turn it off. Between the numbers is the off positions. Your zoom ring is on the top here. As I said, it's 2.5 to 10. I've got mine set to 10. So that's about it, I suppose. The eyepiece, which is covered up here by a Butler Creek scope protection lens protector. You've got your usual eye prescription adjustment in there for your eyes, so that you can actually focus in the reticle as sharp as you need to have that for your particular prescription, so that's great. Oh, and inside here on the actual illuminated reticle turret, there's a slot here. That's where the battery goes for that particular for the actual illumination. So to unscrew, you'd put a screwdriver or a coin in there to turn this cap off, and your battery's under there to replace if you need to. So a great scope. I found this really good, this scope. It's worked for me. What I do find with this is that if my head's not aligned with the scope properly, then I actually get blackness. So it forces me to align my head in the right position. So it's that you still can get some parallax correction at various ranges, but because how the scope's designed, it seems to pull your eye in better, and you seem to find the same position as you rest your head on the cheek piece of your gun. You seem to align better with this scope for some reason, and that's great. I don't seem to be having any parallax problems with this scope because of that. So that's my review. Of course, if you've got any questions about this scope, then please come forward if you've got the scope already and you need to add anything, or you think there's something to add, then obviously write in the comments box as well, so other people can actually read that. I'd appreciate it if you could press like for this video if you've liked it, and of course subscribe to my videos if you haven't already done so. So that's it. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.